Good evening, everyone. Welcome to American Advocates. I believe this will be episode 38 or 39. I keep losing counts. 38 live episodes, that is. Over a month strong now of episodes live throughout the week. Going live a little earlier than I projected as well, just to keep people on their toes. Of course, nobody's watching right now, but 5 minutes early as opposed to usually 15 minutes late, which is how I do things around here. It's also a Monday. Not a lot of news has developed just yet. It's a lot easier to report on stuff Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Also happens to be the three best peak days for viewership on YouTube anyway. But I wanted to get on here to discuss the Iran war and how, as I named it in the title, everything Trump intended to happen, everything Trump said he wanted to happen. The fact of the matter is, this Iran war seems to be shaping up to have the opposite effect if you really take a look at it from a fair and critical lens. Greg Sutton, hey, hello, welcome to the stream, man. Thanks for tuning in. And it's hard to see it any other way at this point in time. When I keep looking at the news, I'm paying attention to world news. I'm looking at what's going on around the world, how other countries are responding to this, how Iran has responded to this as well. Really are the indicators and the factors at play here when it comes to how this is unfolding. And this has been the messaging that I've been sharing on this stream now for the past couple of days in regards to this Iran war, is that basically anytime you enter into a conflict or a war, it's a war really, it's a roll of the dice. Just like when you play the board game Risk, right? You can have the biggest army, but if the dice doesn't roll your way, you can still wind up losing. And America's not going to lose. Our army, our military is just far too powerful for that. And I am a proud American. I'm proud of our military and of us being the world's hegemony, being a superpower. So I'm not here to be one of those people. I'm not here to say Iran's superior to us. I'm not some liberal out there that thinks America should walk around kneeling to every other country because we're for some reason inferior. We're not. We are a superior nation. But the bottom line is, I do believe this war was a mistake. And the fact of the matter is, what we're seeing unfold right now as a result of this war is the opposite of the intentions, or at least the stated intentions by this Trump administration. So I'm seeing my law and order has returned to American advocates finally. All weekend long, I was wondering where my ICE agent Glenn, my moderator, has been at, man. Thankfully, nobody needed to be deported over the weekend, but I didn't see your name pop up at all over the weekend. And I just want to let you know, Glenn, though I don't pay you a dime, I do expect that you're on the clock. If I go live at 2 a.m., I expect you to have a notification on your phone that will wake you up out of your sleep so you can moderate my chat. So there's no days off for you anymore, and maybe one day you'll get paid if this channel grows into some sort of ridiculously sized channel. But no days off. I don't ever want to see that again, Glenn. You need to be in this chat Saturday and Sunday. Unpaid ICE agent, exactly. Otherwise, I'm going to Greg Bavino you, and I'm going to pull you out of American Advocates and send you to some liberal place in California. Anyways, let me get on with the messaging, guys. Let's get on with what I'm really here to talk about here. And that is, again, the Iran war having the opposite effect that Trump intended. I want to address a lot of what I'm seeing in the news, the world news specifically. I do like to pull up articles that are being written in Israel. They're actually far more honest over there than they are with us when they're telling Americans what they want out of this from us, as well as news that you're seeing from countries like Poland, etc. So this is all playing a part here because, first and foremost, the main reason, without a doubt, that we are doing this. We are in a war with Iran and in the Middle East once again, has been clearly stated, I believe, by the Trump administration. Though I will tell you, of course, the messaging of this has been argued. It's been confused. The goalpost seems to have been shifted by this administration when they feel it's convenient to do so. But the bottom line is, there's no way around the fact that this Trump administration, whether you believe it or not, has made it very clear that we are here because of nuclear warheads, possible nuclear power, possible WMDs in the Middle East. There's WMDs in the Middle East. We have it on good intelligence that there's WMDs, and we can't let those Arabs have the WMDs. So we're there for that. And I guess in some sort of a theory here, some sort of a playing field, I kind of like last summer, I didn't disagree with the strikes. They were clean, they were quick, we were in, we were out, and then the administration claimed victory and said, hey, Fordo, Isfahan, Natanz, all done, gone. Complete annihilation. We took out their nuclear capabilities. Iran gave us a courtesy call before they struck a military base with nobody in it, just so they could not appear weak. Problem solved. I was okay with that. I wasn't thrilled by it. I didn't like that it happened, but it was done, and I felt like we could move on from it. However, here we are, back in the Middle East now. Apparently, they were possibly developing nuclear warheads, right? I'm not buying it anymore, is the first problem with this, right? I'm just not buying it. I think most people my age, I'm of course on the younger end of the millennial spectrum. I'm just really starting off in my 30s. I'm close to the Gen Z gap, the Gen Z line in 97, I think it is. So I think young people don't buy this because we've already lived through as kids and as teenagers, for the older millennials out there, the Iraq War and the debacle of '03 and '04, and we've seen the expense and the long-term drag effect on our economy from this war. $6 trillion in debt, a lot of lives lost, faulty intelligence that turned out to be completely untrue. So I'm not buying it, and you can't really fault anybody for not buying it, right? So that's the first problem. But the second problem is, if this really is about stopping a country from becoming a superpower like Iran and preventing them from developing nuclear warheads, well, perhaps we are accomplishing that. But the bottom line is we should be viewing every country in the world through kind of the same lens, no matter if they're our ally or our enemy. And I do believe there's some sort of a worldwide consensus here that developing more nuclear warheads is a net negative for the future of our world. I think most countries at face value tend to agree with that, though some of them go and sneak around and do it anyway. But at least at face value, most world leaders will acknowledge not a good idea. Developing nuclear warheads, inventing a nuke was a mistake probably, and a net negative for mankind. And so what we're seeing here now in response to this whole situation in the Middle East, the Iran war, taking out their nuclear capability, we're seeing other countries come to the forefront now, and they're really starting to question their diplomacy with not just the United States, but with other allies, other countries, with Israel. What's Israel going to do next? Who is Israel going to deem as a threat next that they'll point at and have America attack? Just to be real, or what's going to happen? Is American security guaranteed anymore even? I'll cover that in a little bit as well, because what's happening in the Middle East, who Iran has decided to retaliate against, will play a part here as well when it comes to having the opposite effect that Trump intended. But a lot of countries are starting to ask that question. Poland actually being one of the big ones. I have that written down here. Poland is now going straight up for nuclear power and warheads. Their leader, Donald Tusk, you can't make that name up. That's literally his name. He's now stated that he wants to start developing nuclear warheads. Poland is worried about the future of its sovereignty and security, and it's worried about the future of the world, in all honesty, especially if, to be frank with you, America is going to continue meddling in the Middle East like this and continue just striking countries at will, especially Middle Eastern ones in the old world. And you all know here, it could be a drinking game at this point if you drink on this channel. I am all about that Monroe Doctrine. I think it's so foolish that we're over there at all to begin with. Our founding fathers warned against, my one viewer, Keystone Liberty, has the quote from, I think it's Washington, or no, it's John Adams, I believe it was. America should not go overseas in the pursuit of slaying monsters, right? That part of the world has not much to do with us anymore, and we are separated from it. We should be taking advantage of the fact that we're so far away from there. But for some reason, and actually I think the reason's obvious at this point, we keep getting dragged over there, right? So much so that we're dealing with Venezuela and Cuba, and then as soon as all of a sudden we're told Iran's a problem from a certain country over there, Donald Trump says, no problem, let's just move all of our Navy from Venezuela and Cuba to the Persian Gulf. So I'm a big believer in that first and foremost, but since we're not abiding by that Monroe Doctrine, other countries, I think, are rightfully starting to question what we'll do next. They're starting to doubt their country's sovereignty, their country's ability to remain sovereign without nuclear power, and they're starting to doubt America's ability to keep the rest of these countries safe, our allies safe. And so Poland's one of those countries. They're even now in talks with France, apparently, and Emmanuel Macron about going in together to do this and to ramp up the development of nuclear power or just create it all together in Poland's case, I believe. South Korea is another one as well, right? Now, South Korea is our ally, and South Korea is a country that we're continually looking out for when it comes to protecting them, obviously, from not just North Korea, but China as well, to be honest with you. And, what they're seeing now, too, is the second that this broke out with Iran, we actually pulled, I believe it's our THAAD system, we pulled an entire THAAD system out from that region that was pointed at China just so we could help out Israel with Iran. And so when you do that, and when you're basically making the statement to a lot of these countries, well, you're just not as important as that barren Middle Eastern land. You just don't have enough oil under your soil for us to keep up the level of protection that we were maintaining for you. So now it's in the Middle East, you're less protected. And South Korea now is rightfully asking the question as well. Should we start ramping up or going for nukes? Should we go down that process now? And you can't blame these countries for that, right? You just can't. So furthermore, in more of a hypocritical fashion as well, I wanted to point this out. President Donald Trump is giving out the sweetheart deal to the Saudis, right? They do seem like the nicer Arabs out there. They greet us with a smile. They throw a parade for Trump when he lands there. They gift him a jet, etc. So they're I guess you would call them the best case scenario Muslims or Arabs. They're apathetic, right, to their own religion and cultures, and easily able to adapt to, our Western way of life, it seems. They even seem to want to replicate that in some cases, like the United Arab Emirates and Dubai. So, and in some ways, they've perhaps even done a better job of it, sadly. But, Trump's giving them the sweetheart deal with possible uranium enrichment deals, right? Which can only really lead to one thing over time. So Trump's been slightly hypocritical on that. Iran can have nukes, but Saudi Arabia can. On top of that, this is the first reason I say in my video title here that this war is having the opposite effect that Trump intended, this Iran war, because the stated goal here was to ensure that Iran can't develop nuclear warheads. By default, you should assume that the purpose and the goal and purpose of every superpower is to ensure that, quite honestly, no matter how unfair this sounds from a diplomacy standpoint, no other country that doesn't have nuclear power should be allowed to develop nuclear power. That is the way the world works at the end of the day, and we should actively pursue that as a goal, right? And so the bottom line is it is failing from that standpoint because a lot of countries are now starting to ask this question: should we ramp up our production and or straight up start pursuing the development of nuclear warheads for the first time in the country's history? A lot of countries are going down that path. I think it ultimately is a net negative for that reason. So that's the first point in all of this. Before I move on to other points, I will take a look. I see the chats are coming in. The views are here. Please be sure to double tap your phone if you're watching from your phone. It likes the stream. Please like the stream, especially if you're agreeing with the messaging. It helps the stream perform well in the algorithm. If you're watching from your computer, just hit the thumbs up button. If your hair is blue, if you're a liberal, or worse right now, if you're a MAGA cheerleader and you can't stand this messaging because I'm coming after your Lord and Savior Donald Trump, who I voted for, by the way, but I feel I am more than entitled to criticize, then please hit the dislike button and then go fuck right off and get off this stream, okay? Go on to some sort of MAGA cheerleader channel, or if you're a liberal, go find your David Pakman, your Brian Krasenstein. Go somewhere else. You're literally not welcomed here. You disgust me, okay? But that solves that. I'll take a look at some chats here. I see some regulars are back. Bold as a lion. I see he's lighting up the chat. Appreciate that. Glenn was saying, maybe I was working, but in stealth mode, says Glenn. I doubt it. I think you're a liar. Glenn, you mean you didn't get any of the $350 million that Christie money laundered? Yeah, that ad is wild. By the way, just a quick side tangent for like 30 to 60 seconds here. I was reading into more of that Kristi Noem stuff because I did cover that here. When was it? Last week now? And I was looking into the ad campaign that she took out. $220 million or 250 million, really, I think is what they're saying. $250 million is how even the GOP senators like Kennedy were coming after her over. Well, I decided, I was like, that's like, how do you spend that much on a couple of commercials? And so I was looking into the cost of movie productions, and Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, I believe, was the other one. Those movies cost 350 million to make. So she spent over 2/3 of that basically on a fucking commercial or two. That's wild. And then I looked up, it's an older movie now, technically, which is weird for me to say, but the first Avengers movie, 2012, that was actually only $220 million. A whole ass movie got produced that was over 2 hours long for the same price, or a little bit less even after all was said and done, than what Kristi Noem was able to accomplish and make, I think it was 2 or 3 commercials. That's insanity, actually. So, and I'm not going to make a whole new video to talk about that. I think it's just a bunch of nonsense, but I did want to mention that because when you compare it to that, you're like, what the, that's just disgusting. That's just so gross. And I love John Kennedy for that. John Kennedy, he said, he's like, I squeak when I walk when it comes to taxpayer dollars. That's your money. We need more senators like John Kennedy. He's a good man. So, and he was a Republican and not afraid to call out another Republican for that because Kristi Noem needed to be called out. So good for him. Yeah, Israel has them, says David. Sorry, I don't remember what I was saying at that time when you said that, but I probably agree with you. NJCD says, hey, moron, they don't have nukes. Who doesn't have nukes? Who? Who doesn't have nukes? Iran or Poland? Or South Korea? Which one? What are you talking about? He's being sarcastic, buddy. Yeah, thank you, Bola's line. You get the cattle in the chat. You get the goy. You get the swine. You can't do anything about it. Glenn doesn't ban them under my instruction unless they spam. I thought Clown Donald totally obliterated it last year. We all did. That's what we were told. The nuke thing is a lazy excuse, says Glenn. It might be. I think it kind of is, actually. But I'm deliberately going off of the messaging of this administration to show the fallacy and to show the hypocrisy in some cases, but mostly just to show the critical error of logic here, and really to show the fact that war is unpredictable, and really to tie that in with the fact that you shouldn't be believing what this administration's saying when it comes to 4 to 5 weeks. We've been lured into every war that way, pretty much, or a lot of them at least. If you go back to the Civil War time era, that we're talking the Union versus Confederacy, the Union soldiers' wives made sandwiches and brought them to the battlefield on day one. They made lunch, basically, so that they could sit on a hill far away, watch it all unfold. They believed it would be over with by the end of lunch. And look how long the Civil War went on for. Another example is Germany, I believe, on their Russian campaign. Hitler's biggest mistake, in all honesty, of course, taking on a war on 2 fronts, going into Russia. They were kind of told the same thing. The German soldiers, they were told, this will only be a couple of weeks. We will flatten Russia. They're poor, they're desperate, they don't have the might. Big mistake that was, and turned out to be completely untrue. Actually, even more than untrue. It actually cost them everything, right? So that's another example. And then, I view the Iraq War in 2003. We were told similar stuff by that administration. We had the Bush administration, Dick Cheney, I believe it was, Colin Powell. I was a kid, mind you, so Dick Cheney, Colin Powell, I think Condoleezza Rice, and I think it was Dick Cheney, actually, specifically, who said, this will just be a couple of weeks. That's all we really need. These uncivilized Arabs, we're going to go in, we'll take care of it, we'll eliminate the WMDs, and we'll be out of there. And that didn't turn out to be true either, and once again was detrimental to us. It wound up costing us $6 trillion and thousands of soldiers' lives and years of our time. So, you can't fault Americans like myself and plenty of others at this point, especially my age bracket or younger, for just not believing that. 4 to 5 weeks, give me a break. We lived through it, and Gen Z didn't live through it, really. They can't remember it, but, not that it was war, but COVID was under the same circumstances as well. 2 weeks to flatten the curve turned into 2 years. So it's all bullshit. Any timeline the government gives you is bullshit. So that's the main message there. Stop the nuke, dude. I personally think nukes in general is a psyops. I mean, the excuse of nukes, maybe. Nukes themselves being a psyop, I don't know about that. The reset button, says Mr. whatever your name is. 1953 is coming back to bite America. Maybe. Hey, what's up with, I don't know who that is. Doing fine, not falling. Hey, 2009 lifeguards here too. Welcome, man. I'm still holding out hope for the best, as we should. There's no I'm not here to be a doomer, but I am here to be a realist right now. Believe it or not, I'm actually an optimist in my day-to-day life. I have a very sunny disposition, but sometimes you just got to be a realist. So, fucking right off. Okay, thank you for that, Adam Martin. Hey, I can't blame you. Bye, you heathen. All right, hey, thank you for following instructions. You're probably not even here anymore, but thank you. That if people are hate watching like that, follow Adam Martin's lead in chat. Glenn says, it makes me so angry. Trump is focused on trying to free a Middle East land that they're proven for decades they don't know how to create democratic, yeah, exactly, societies or civilizations instead of focusing on protecting the future of USA jobs. Yep. Hey, it's all a mess right now, all right? It's all just a mess. So, George H.W. Bush, Gulf War. George W. Bush, Iraq War. Donald Trump, Iran War. Republican presidents will never learn. I actually kind of agree with that in all honesty. But let's also not forget that Obama actually bombed more people in his administration than a lot of those Republican presidents. So Democrats might be a little bit, in some cases, I would say they don't have the balls to wage war, but that's not necessarily always a bad thing then, is it? But Democrats they're just as bad for different reasons in a lot of ways, and it is, especially when it comes to the Middle East. At least it has been up until now a one-party system when it comes to that region. They just come together in bipartisan fashion to our detriment always when it comes to that region. No matter who you vote for, the debt keeps rising and the bombs keep dropping. That's true. Hotel corner chair, the cuck chair. Very nice. We're ahead of schedule. Let the professionals handle it, says Schumacher. Yeah, okay. We're ahead of schedule. Wasn't that what Trump said today? Are you just eating the slop? You're also sharing the picture of the oil futures dropping down today. You see, guys, it dropped from 115 to 90. Wait till your gas is back down under $2 again. That day's coming. You mean Trump Daddy syndrome? Yeah. Mark Rutz called Trump Daddy. If you haven't lived a day under Ayatollah tyranny, you have no say in this matter, says Jeff Samay. Have you? I have a say in this matter. You know why? It's my money funding this bullshit. And I'll tell you what, I don't give a shit about the people who live under Ayatollah tyranny. That's their fucking problem. I'm not in that part of the world. I definitely have not lived under Ayatollah tyranny. I don't plan on ever living under Ayatollah tyranny. And if I did, I would be doing everything I could in my own power to rise up against it with the people of my country. Because why? It would be my problem. By the way, let's just imagine a scenario, Jeff, where America falls under Ayatollah tyranny. We're just so reckless that our government is seized by Muslims, just the most radical jihadist Muslims. Mojtaba Khamenei, the son, comes here, conquers America somehow. We wake up tomorrow under Ayatollah tyranny, by the way. Which country in the world do you think is coming to rescue us? Despite the fact that we do that for all these other fucking countries, which country in the world is coming to rescue us, Jeff? Will it be Israel? Are they coming right promptly to our aid? Are they sending soldiers to fight and die on our home front for us? Do you think they're doing that? Do you think any of these countries are coming? Do you think NATO's going to send soldiers? Just got to get real with you, okay? That's really, and that highlights the point of, I think, why so many people are sick of this shit. We're always the one giving our blood and treasure for this bullshit. And we all know that if the script was flipped in a devastating form, they wouldn't be helping us. Partly because when it comes to NATO, they don't have the capability to help us the way we would need to be helped. They would grandstand on the global stage and virtue signal and condemn everything happening if America was being conquered. And they'd probably send a couple of soldiers, but you can look at British politics right now, and they're all angry over there for a rightful reason. Their military has largely been decommissioned. They've been decommissioning tanks. They've been reducing the number of their naval fleet ships. They've been reducing their soldier number. Like, it's bad, okay? And so that's one of the reasons. And then the other one, to be quite frank with you, when you pay attention to the history of the Middle East and America's involvement there, it is always us doing stuff for Israel. When you look at the Iraq war statistics and the numbers, Israel doesn't shed their blood for this stuff. They expect us to do that. So if the script was flipped, would any of these people come to our aid? The answer is likely no. And so as a result, that's why I'm first and foremost pissed, because we're helping these countries, and for what? For what? We wouldn't get that in return. None of their actions demonstrate that we would. They helped us. NATO helped us a little bit during the Middle East war of the early 2000s. And even then, you had countries like France. They were imposing, like, I think it was France, they were, some of the NATO countries at least, were imposing restrictions on where their soldiers could be placed in Afghanistan. Only the cooler zones, not the most intense hot war zones of Afghanistan. They didn't want their soldiers dying for America's cause. So, and you can't blame them technically from an objective standpoint, but I'm just saying America is so benevolent, it goes too far in the opposite extreme to where we become the doormat for these countries. It is so stupid. American Advocates for President, says Eddie. Welcome back, Eddie. Appreciate you, man. I could never run for president currently. I just have my common sense, what should be moderate viewpoints on war and politics, are sadly just considered way too extreme nowadays. You're either a neocon or you believe in gender mutilation and abortion. And there's really, if you're in between, you just wind up offending both sides and you're a radical. That's where our politics is at. Either it's, hey, soldiers should go die for Israel and soldiers should go over there and liberate Persians at the Americans' expense, by the way. We fund this shit. So either you're a neocon conservative, hasn't changed, or you're on the left and you decide, oh, you know what? Yeah. The best thing we could do for 14-year-old men is to raise them up since they were like 4 or 5 and 6 years old in kindergarten and start telling them that they're supposed to be born a girl. And then when they're a teenager, they should be allowed to just chop their penis off and start the process of becoming a girl. Also, we should all dye our hair blue and we should wear 2 masks and get 5 boosters, and abortion should be allowed for everybody under all circumstances. I'm neither of those. It's all retarded. It's all retarded. And I'm not a fence sitter, by the way. My stances are very clear, and I'm not a fence sitter because I upset so many people in the chat that come and go while I'm live all the time. So it's not even a fence sitter take. It's really just common sense. It's common fucking sense. And that's why I couldn't run for president, because either you need to be serving Israel as a Republican or you need to be serving madness as a liberal. And it's all just so disgusting. It's disgusting. It's so gross. We need a major reformation in this country. We need I would of course emphasize nonviolent revolution. We need good people running for politics is what we need. We need a return to religion. We need Christianity. We need God. That's really the point. That's where I'm at. And my stream last night, I was discussing that too about Judaism, Judeo-Christian. So it's like even the Christians that are influencing politics right now in Trump's cabinet, they're like Christian Zionists. They're Judeo-Christian. It's a false term. It's Luciferian language. It's not real. So a lot of the Christianity in this country is not even real to begin with, in my opinion. It's demonic, really. So it's all just, I'm not a black pillar. I literally do have hope. I think there's hope on the horizon, especially with Gen Z, but that's the reality of it. I do want to return. I want to get back on track here, guys. I'll take a look at more chats as time goes on. You can always feel free to pay your fucking tariffs in this chat, which of course you do so in the form of a super chat. If that happens, I literally will stop everything to take a look at your messages. Some of you are so fucking stupid, you should be paying me your tariff just to make up for your stupidity. Let's be real. But anyways, the second point I wanted to address today when it comes to the Iran war having the opposite effect that Trump intended was the fact that this was being done for regime change. Now, the Trump administration can't seem to totally make up its mind when it comes to this narrative. Trump, I think, has flip-flopped on this, if I remember correctly. Well, it wasn't about regime change, but we took out 49. We took out 49 of the most prominent regime leaders. But he's also like tweeted about how Iran needs regime change, if I remember right, last year. So who knows anymore? But to look at that from at face value and to accept the Trump administration's word on it, let's just be naive. Let's pretend this is about nukes, which I already demonstrated why this is having the opposite effect for countries developing nuclear power. Let's also pretend it's about regime change. We need a more reasonable regime in there, right? If you're that gullible to believe that. Well, let's take a look at the effects that's having and what's happening and unfolding in Iran over that. Machtaba, however you say that ridiculous, Arab name, Khamenei, will now be the supreme leader. He's officially been appointed as the supreme leader, right? Excuse me. This is Ali Khamenei's son. Now, this is the son. And he's already old. He's like 56, but that's significantly younger than 86, which is how old Ali Khamenei was, right? And so 56 is still spry enough to be energetic, more enthusiastic about stuff, your country, more nationalistic, more mentally acute, right? On top of that, usually the younger generations are a little bit more zealous. They're a little bit more radical or extreme. And so this is not a good sign. Furthermore, Mojtaba Khamenei's reportedly entire family has been killed along with the Iranian regime in the U.S.-Israel strikes on the country. Reportedly, his wife and children were killed in the strikes, and they are dead. So, now the fact of the matter is we have the son in. He's going to be more radical. So if you're going to argue regime change for the purpose of being able to work with more reasonable leaders in Iran, well, this is going to have, once again, the opposite effect of that. If we have the son in who's going to be more radical by default, most likely, and then on top of it, his family has been killed, his wife and kids are dead because of these these U.S.-Israel strikes, he's going to be worse. He's going to hate us even more. So that's something I wanted to address as well. And the bottom line is, of course, I think what's more than likely to happen is they're going to keep striking until they kill him too. But if he can remain in hiding and try to wait it out, right? There's midterm pressures that will be no doubt applied on President Donald Trump, at least in some capacity. If Trump will go along with that or not is a question that remains to be seen. But they no doubt know that. And so if he can remain in hiding long enough for Trump to decide that he can't keep up this war, they don't want to call it that, but it's a war, and he wants to pull out, sometime in the summer if it gets dragged on that long, well, he's the supreme leader then. And that's a big problem. He's going to despise America and certainly despise Israel way more than his father did. And in another way, too, it does kind of come back to nukes. Well, if he remains the supreme leader and it's true that his family was killed by our strikes, not only will he hate us more and be more radicalized against us as an enemy, but he'll be hell-bent on trying to develop nuclear warheads for Iran now, right? He just lived through what I would call sort of a diplomatic betrayal in a way, right? The appearance of us trying to broker peace with them and sending diplomats there and having peace talks only to just like strike them. Granted, Trump gave them a time frame in which this would occur and acted within that time frame. But still, he just lived through all of that. Are we expecting this guy to be more reasonable now? Obviously, the answer to that question is no, we shouldn't, and no, we aren't, and yes, he'll be worse. So the opposite, once again, in this case, is kind of playing out in that regard. It's kind of the opposite effect of what Trump is at least stating are his intentions during this Iran war. So that's another point that I wanted to make here. I'll take a look at a few more chats before I move on to my third point. I see Boulder's line saying, "Funny how I ask MAGA questions in the chat and they can't reply. They can only the MAGA has become the liberals of last year, right? Like that's what people have to realize right now is, if you're still really claiming to be MAGA, and I voted for Trump, I'm a social and fiscal conservative. But if you're at a point now where you're still claiming to be MAGA and you're a plan truster, and this is 12D chess from the Trump administration to you, and the rest of us silly panicans can't understand it, I mean, the verbiage is all crazy. But if that's like your stance, and there are no questions you can answer, you're eating the slop and the propaganda and narrative up, and then you live now to regurgitate it, which is what liberals do, right? For the rest of us that see everything for what it is, we've been calling out the liberals and their bullshit. But now it's like you just see the same behavior exhibited by the MAGA, what's now MAGA cultists, right? And a part of me dies every time I have to call MAGA a cult, right? I defended MAGA during Trump's first term especially, but then even in the 2020s so far, up until recently, I would always adamantly say it's a coalition, not a cult. And it was a coalition. But the fact of the matter is now, at this point, Trump has betrayed his base. No new wars was a prominent campaign promise, and just because he's now decided to change the definition of what war is, which I think is something that everybody deep down knows, this is a war, no matter what they tell you, this is a war, and it's part of the endless wars military-industrial complex structure. So if you're still buying into that, then you're in a cult. There's no way around it at this point. You are in a cult, and it is time to wake up. So And if you agree with that, please give me some hope. Like the stream, like I said, double tap your phone screen or hit the thumbs up on the computer. Subscribe also to American Advocates for more content like this. But yeah, that's that is true, Bold as a Lion. But there's nothing they can answer right now. They can only rely on what Trump is telling them, and that is their narrative. And they will parrot it like liberals do. They will parrot it all over the internet. Clearly, anyone that is trashing this stream has no facts to back up their. Yeah, yeah. Jealous cattle, says Glenn. That's it. Well, when they're trashing, cattle are like chuds. Like, they have like chud politic takes. So cattle are more tolerable. It's the swine. It's the ones that come in here and they can't really articulate any argument. They just come in here and they're like, this guy's an idiot. It's like, all right, well, you're just swine. You're literally just a swine. You're literally that far beneath me. You're swine. So and they leave, thankfully, because I hate casting pearls to swine. You can only hate so much, says Doug Mart. Good MAGA's good. Keep insulting for deflection. Do not self-reflect or hear facts. Yeah, that's pretty much true. I want the Conservative Party to do well. That's why I am calling this out. It's important to criticize our politicians, especially if you voted for them. Because otherwise, they get the idea that you owe them your votes, and then they get the idea that they're infallible and they can do whatever they want. They should be fearful of losing the vote, and they're not currently. They believe that if you look like me, if you're a white American in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s, and you're a man especially, they just believe you'll vote for them by default. And we have to remind them, no, that's not the case. If you do stupid shit like this, you're going to watch Democrats take over again. I don't really give a shit at this point. Because at this point, why would I vote Republican when it's just all the same with just the borders being secure, which will be easily undone if Democrats regain power because there's no border wall. We're getting everything that a Democrat would do. It's just a little bit better or slightly less worse. Not good enough anymore. It's not about voting for the lesser of two evils. It's about voting for what's ideal. We as Americans have a right to demand the best and to demand better for America. Not, please don't make it. I know it's going to get worse under you, but I know it won't get as bad under you as opposed to Kamala. So I'm going to vote for you. Unacceptable. That's completely unacceptable. Since when do Americans tolerate that? Our country wasn't even founded on that. Our country was founded on this fucking place sucks. The UK, Britain, Europe, in a lot of cases. I'm leaving and I'm creating a country in the image that I want it to be in. And if you try to interfere with it, we're going to kick you out of the country. That's what America was founded on. Now it's gotten to a point where conservative, spineless, dickless, puss boy men, who are mostly boomers, by the way, they believe the fantasies and then towing the party line. They will literally tell you, well, nothing can be done about it. Two wings on the same bird. It's just about voting for the lesser of two evils. Fuck you. We're done with that. We're done with those days. And it's time that the Republican Party, Republican politicians, wake up to that reality. And they're going to be slapped real hard with it during the midterms. Now there's a polling starting to come in that's showing that they're at risk of losing the Senate as well. And so, they might lose the Senate and the House. And I hope they do. They deserve it. And this administration has gone so far off the rails now that it needs to be slowed down. And the way it's slowed down is by the checks and balances. Not that I'll take delight in it, but I will smile when it happens, knowing that the boomer conservatives are losing their minds and fearing for their Social Security and fearing over the fact that they just bought a second house today and fearing for the safety of this country. It's like, fuck the boomers. They're the reason this country's in the toilet to begin with. The neocon Republican politicians, they'll be dreading the day that the House and the Senate are lost to Democrats. This administration knows if that happens, it's fucked. Because Trump will get impeached over it. And possibly, I don't think it's a 0% chance. I think it's higher than a 0% chance he gets impeached out of office. If this does turn into a war, he never got congressional approval for it. The Democrats have made it clear their only goal is to impeach Trump. And they will do it. And if they have an actual reason to do it, we've already seen some Republicans cross the aisle and take Democrats' side against Trump. They'll do that again very likely over this. And Trump could wind up being impeached out of office. That would be wild to live through that. But I actually could see that as a possibility. I think it's a small chance. I think the overwhelming odds are Trump finishes his 3 years. But it's not like that couldn't happen. And we got to be cautious of that, So there's that. Now, moving on to the third point I wanted to make here about how the Iran war is having the opposite effect that Trump has intended, at least when it comes to what he's clearly stated as his intentions when it comes to this war, is, we're told that this was being done to make America safer, right? And this is, again, that boomer trope. The boomers, they love the idea of blowing up the towel heads, the Arabs. That's what they'll tell you straight up. We got to take the fight to them before they come here and take the fight to us. You hear that all the time, and it's like, all right, please sit down. Don't fall and break your hip for the second time, all right? Have a seat. Let me explain some stuff to you, okay? You've been living in a fantasy land because you're in your head, this is still the 1970s and 80s, okay? It isn't now. So there's stuff that they need to be explained. There's certain things they don't understand. This is one of those, because what we're seeing in the news now, and in some cases, by the way, they've tried to suppress a lot of these stories that are coming to light, but some of them have been too big to hold back for even Fox News or the conservative outlets, is the fact that sleeper cells are being activated in our country, right? And this is starting to hit the news. It's something I got wind of a few days ago before it was really hitting mainstream news, because there's obviously no incentive for Fox News to report on this. They know it will make the Trump administration look bad because people will go from point A to point B pretty quickly on this. So they tried to sort of suppress it, but there's like a handful of stories now. Two of them are mainstream enough to be covered at this point. The sleeper cells, the Iranian sleeper cells, or in some cases, the one was ISIS. I wrote it down, actually. Sleeper cell attacks starting to take place. The one at Gracie Mansion, I believe, was yesterday or today even. Iranian intel is another one that we're starting to get a hold of here, suggesting more. But Gracie Mansion, I mean, listen to these names. Emir Balat, Ibrahim Kayumi, or I don't even know how to say that. Kajumi. Ibrahim and Emir, okay? That's the bottom line there. That tells you all you need to know. Now, of course, the reports have already come in that they are ISIS affiliated, and these were the people that I think were throwing homemade hand grenades at Gracie Mansion and in the proximity of like Zohran Mamdani, the mayor there. And this was, again, there's ISIS ties here. The FBI would later go on to raid some of their personal property, their private property, and they found more explosives ready to go, according to reports. That's one of the mainstream examples happening right now. But then there was another one. There was an Austin, Texas mass shooting I saw, and the shooter was wearing clothing that said "Property of Allah" on his gear. And it's being reported that he did so because of the devastating strikes on Ali Khamenei and the loss of the Ayatollah Supreme Leader. So this is starting to occur, and this is something I really want to point out. Stop everything, though. Big super chat from Glenn. I'll take this as your makeup for not being here over the weekend to moderate my chat. He says, Stephen has been deported for spamming Trump over a dozen times. This will not be tolerated. You know what? In honor of that, I'm going to read it in Trump's voice. Scumbag Stephen has been deported for spamming Trump over a dozen times. Not that I don't like hearing the name Trump. Trump. Everything's Trump. You know, it's a great name. It's my second favorite word in the dictionary under tariff. Trump and tariff. It's just got a beautiful ring to it. And then the media says, well, what about God? What about family? And then I go, oh boy, I'm in trouble now. Okay, God, family, children, the Bible, then Trump, then tariffs. Okay. But yeah, you can't go spamming the name Trump. It disrupts the chats. Other chatters have things to say that are way more intelligent than you. And the streamer here at American Advocates, he does like to read them. So, you know. But he's the spammiest of spammers. Some say the spammiest. They've never seen anything like it, they say. This will not be tolerated. Swine, you have been warned. Law and order first. I agree with that, by the way. Law and order. I say this all the time. I used to be a libertarian when I was a teenager. It made more sense back then. Because, you know, the libertarians were advocating for pulling out of the stupid Middle East wars. And on top of that, they prioritized freedom. Now I've gotten a little bit older, and I've seen what unchecked society looks like, where we technically still have our freedoms, but law and order is on it's diminishing. And then you realize law and order is the chieftain of concepts and principles for society. It must be prioritized. And right under that should be freedom, and they should never conflict with each other. But, you know, if you don't have law and order and you have freedom, then you just have madness. So I do agree with that. Law and order first. 2009 Lifeguard says, good, no spamming. Free speech I'm a free speech absolutist. You can say anything you want in this chat. Of course, YouTube has its own guidelines that you must abide by, and YouTube is kind of more, they do censor a little bit more than I would prefer, but you just can't spam your free speech. That's too disruptive. Spamming will only benefit the channel, though. Yeah, that's true, but, the chats do help the signal boost in the algorithm, but spam is unacceptable. We don't tolerate it. Spam is for swine, and swine are for other channels. Opposite effect. You don't have to like Trump to benefit from America's greatness. I voted for Trump, and I liked him at first. I just don't like anything he's doing now. So let me use that to get back on point here. America safer. Well, we have the sleeper cells, right? And that's what I was trying to get at here. We've now also received Iranian intel. It was supposed to be coded. It was supposed to be encrypted, but we were able to figure out what it was saying. And according to some reports here, the Iranian intel is suggesting that more sleeper cells will be activated. Apparently, the Iranian intel literally was stating active assets abroad, right? And I wanted to bring this up, the Austin, Texas mass shooting at the hands of the Muslim, the Gracie Mansion incident where they're throwing homemade hand grenades. They're also Arabs of some sort, Ibrahim and Emir, activate assets abroad, right? I want to bring this out to make a strong point here when it comes to something, and that is, of course, the fact that the ideology that the boomer conservatives have, and especially neoconservatives have, and what they gaslight us with is take the fight to them so that they can't take it to us, right? But what we're seeing now is not only are we taking a fight to them in a way that doesn't benefit Americans and does cost us more money and possibly has much more detrimental implications when it comes to geopolitics and diplomacy, which I'm going to break down in a minute here, but also we're now seeing that we suffer the effects of them taking the fight to us here regardless. And why? Because we have a weak immigration policy even under this administration. How often does Trump, for every time he says the word Iran, Muslim, Middle East, jihadist extremists, we hear him talk about it enough. We hear conservatives talk about this enough. We hear them say we got to defend Israel from those savages. We hear it all the time. How often does Trump address the problem in Texas, Dallas, Texas, where Muslims are trying to create a separate colony for themselves and create their own houses of worship? I believe they call them mosques or whatever. They were basically trying to develop their own little city off to the side in Texas. We don't hear that mentioned at all. How often does he talk about Dearborn, Michigan, a city that's being outright colonized by Muslims? 52% Muslim population. And here on this channel, just because I've been more critical of Israel lately on it, because now I'm seeing it for what it all is, and just because I've been critical of the president I voted for, President Trump, doesn't mean I'm an Islam or Muslim sympathizer. I just did my video yesterday about Judaism and how Judeo-Christian is a fallacy in Luciferian language, but all throughout that stream, I made it very clear as well. Islam is a demonic religion as well. It is not compatible with the Western Hemisphere here. It's not compatible with our freedoms or our way of life. And so, from that standpoint, should not this administration be addressing Dearborn, Michigan, Dallas, Texas, etc., and the fact that we have these people in this country in the form of refugees, by the way, who just for some reason never left, or the fact that they come here and they have multiple children that we now recognize as citizens because of birthright citizenship when we shouldn't be? Should we not be taking a harder look at the population within our own lands and identifying them as possible threats that they are in a lot of cases? And that's not what happens, though. This administration is not focused on that. And so I view it as a partial lie at the very least, and probably mostly a lie, that we have to take the fight to them before they take it to us. They're already here. And every time we do something like this shit happens. Sleeper cells are activated. And the problem is not being dealt with domestically. And I'll tell you why. It's because the answer to this and why this is happening is it's not actually about Muslims being a threat to America. Iran was never a big threat to us. I'm not buying that. They had ballistic missiles that could only reach Europe and could definitely reach Israel. Those missiles could not reach America. They did not have nuclear warheads. They were not a threat to us. They're all the way over on the other side of the world. They're not even our problem. They are Europe's problem and Israel's problem and Britain's problem. They're not America's problem. But we gaslight. We're gaslit into believing that it is our problem for the sake of Israel. And it is just so obvious now. And that's really what it's all about. The Muslims that are here in our country that are activated sleeper cells now and committing mass shootings and throwing homemade explosives at Zohran Mamdani are not Israel's problem. And so we don't care about them. Nothing will be done to solve that problem. Dearborn, Michigan will continue to grow in Muslim population, not be shrunk in Muslim population, right? We're not going to go in there and deport a bunch of them if they're illegal, especially, or revoke citizenships if needed. It's not going to happen at the scale that's needed because they're not really the focal point of this administration. This administration, like every other past administration, lives to serve the Middle East agenda and Israel's purpose, and lives to serve our other allies for that matter too. NATO, we just let NATO take advantage of us. We send copious amounts of money to the Ukraine. But when it comes to dealing with the safety of Americans, it's a fucking lie. That's the reality of it. And as more sleeper cells get activated and more mass shootings occur from Muslim jihadists who wear gear that says property of Allah and do so with a written statement perhaps of the fact that this was done to avenge Ali Khamenei's death, and as more are activated in the name of ISIS, you're not going to see this administration take it nearly as seriously as we take the issue over in Iran, right? The Persian liberation is more important than you. And that's because over there, that's the agenda. And it all ties in once again with Israel, who just outright contributes a lot of money to our politics. That's the bottom line. That's the reality that you have to accept. And people don't want to accept it, but we're watching it unfold before our very eyes. If they were serious about a Muslim problem and about radical jihadists, then we'd have a much more serious FBI and a much more serious DOJ actively looking for these people to stop this stuff before it happens. And you can't do that in all cases. I'm aware of that. But they would be taking immigration more seriously. Instead, we've gotten the opposite. The joke's already been circulating online now. Some of you have probably seen it. Mass deployment into the Middle East, not mass deportations. And it's true. It's just outright true. Glenn says the swine are coming out in force in chat. That's okay. The swine are here. We can handle them, Glenn. Chris Starbuck says, you ain't watching anything but the media with your eyes, says Chris Starbuck. I do not watch. Do I look like a fucking boomer? Do you really think I work a long-ass day so I can hurry up and sit down on my couch with my 1970s TV dinner and turn on CNN or NBC? I don't fucking watch the news, dumbass. I literally read the news, okay? I pull up articles. I go on this platform called X, used to be called Twitter, and what I do oftentimes is, honestly, I just go click on actual politicians' pages and read the tweets that they're saying out of their own, I guess technically their mouth. I read their own statements, okay? It's not hard anymore nowadays. They're on that shit way more than what Fox News or CNN can update you about. Team America World Police. Yuck. We need to stop fighting over left and right and unite as Americans, says Morgan Chandler. Yeah, I don't know about that. That's a toss-up to me, honestly. I understand the greater threat here and what you're alluding to, but I saw what liberal unity looked like during COVID, and it was called stand 6 feet apart, don't go outside all that much, wear 2 face diapers on your face, even if you're in your car by yourself. Some retards to this day still do that. Take this experimental jab, don't question it. If you don't take it, just know that you're a scumbag because you're killing 98-year-old grandmas who would die if you sneezed on them anyway, but they're going to die because you didn't take your experimental jab that's only been studied for 3 years, which is, by the way, definitely the standard amount of time to study this shit. Also, it's so effective that there's 3 boosters coming out for it. Make sure you get all of those as well. I think they're on their 5th one now. That's what liberal unity looks like. I don't want anything to do with that. And I don't want to unify, honestly, with a party that believes in transgender mutilation and abortion and all that shit. I just I'm not game with that. I don't really believe that, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I don't think they're my friend at all. I think that they may wind up being a useful tool to us in the midterms. I do want to see Democrats win the midterms at this point. I think this administration has failed so much that they don't deserve the power that they have. We entrusted Trump with a mandate that he ultimately has forfeited, and he's betrayed us outright. He's betrayed us. This war was the final straw for me. And really, the only redeeming quality out of Trump at this point is the southern border. Even the transgender stuff he slipped up on and accidentally put out a Truth Social exposing how in the Save America Act, it was updated to include no transgender mutilation surgery for minors under 18. But then he even put without the express written consent of the parents. I didn't vote for that. I voted for none of that. Not, well, they can't do it, but if their parents say they can, then they can. No, fuck that. I don't want that. That's disgusting. So we're getting nothing but compromise, capitulation, and honestly betrayal from this administration. And so in the short term, I actually do believe the Democrats wholeheartedly deserve to win. And I believe they'll be useful in that regard. They'll slow down this administration, and they'll probably actually force some form of accountability that to some degree I actually do want to see. I think this administration does need to some degree some accountability for what it's doing right now, because it is kind of going a little bit unchecked when it comes to just what kind of policies it's implementing, how it's handled the Epstein files, what it's done with this Middle East war now and Iran and all that. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. And so I think in 2026 it might be useful. I obviously don't want this country to fall under Democrat rule when it comes to a president or, in 2028. But, I don't know what else to think at this point. So unity, though, I know for a fact I am not unified with liberals. That much I can tell you. Now, moving on, finally, I want to cover this as well. And that is the next lie, that this was being done to liberate the Persians, right? And we did see some of the Iranian people, probably a lot of Persians, rise up at first in a revolutionary type form to try to overthrow their regime or at least rebel against the government there. We saw that, 2 months ago? Ultimately, according to reports, it wound up leading to the death of what some estimate to be 30,000 or more of them, right? And so my argument there, first and foremost, is the chance for a bottom-up regime change, right, from the people doing it organically is slim, because all the ones that would do it and were radical enough to try it are dead now. So that's first and foremost the problem that I saw with that, and I saw that all along. But then also on top of it, it does go back to the fact that a new radical regime might wind up actually being more tyrannical, right, rather than less. And I just covered that earlier when it comes to Ali Khamenei's son, Moshtaba, or Moshtaba, whatever, how you say that stupid fucking name, Moshtaba Khamenei. He's going to be more radical now if the reports are true that his family was lost in the U.S.-Israel strikes, and he's also younger. He's the son, so he's probably more zealous anyway with that stuff. But it's going to be more tyrannical, and with 30,000 Iranians already dead from an attempted revolution, they're going to be more fearful. On top of that, and so again, once again, by the way, this is the opposite effect of what Trump wanted, because no ground reports are coming in even that a revolution is on the verge of breaking out. We don't see the Iranian people seemingly organizing in the streets or marching towards their version of a Capitol Hill. They're not doing that, actually. The ones that would have done that are probably dead, and worse yet, they're all sitting back, because one of the historical precedents for American military involvement in a country like this is we will go in, topple the regime, and then put boots on the ground to enforce our version of law and order to give the people there a chance to breathe and establish or try to establish their own government. So they're waiting for us to go harder on this before probably they emerge out and take charge of any sort of movement there, right? And so that's the trap, because most Americans are radically opposed to boots on the ground in Iran. I think that will be the point where even some of the MAGA cheerleaders experience their watershed moment, a breaking point where they say, yeah, this is too far now. And this Trump administration probably knows that. So we're not going to see a Persian revolution. It doesn't look like that, at least. And that's the opposite effect, once again, of at least what this Trump administration claims is one of the side effect goals, I'd call it at this point. He did say it would be nice if they did. And I think truthfully, Trump was kind of banking on hitting them so hard, which we did. Credit to where it's due. We were precise. We had good intel for where all the leaders were of the Iranian regime, and we killed like 49 of them in less than 2 days. So we annihilated their regime. We did hit them hard. We were pretty precise. And I think Trump was banking on that being more than intimidating enough to force a complete surrender and also encourage a revolution to break out again. And I genuinely believe that's probably what Trump thought would happen. And it's not happening. It's all the opposite, in fact. The people are sheltering in place more. They're not sparking a movement right now. And the Iranian regime is going to get more radicalized, if anything, unless we can take out even more of them, which will be more costly and time consuming and harder to do because they'll start going into hiding. So I did want to bring that point up. And I also wanted to tie that into the fact that Trump boasts constantly about peace in the Middle East. And this is obviously a very this is having a very opposite effect in that region as well, right? So I'm going to talk about that in 1 second, because Iran's response, their strategical retaliation to this, again, objectively, credit where it's due. They strategically did make a smart move in how they retaliated against President Donald Trump striking them. And I'm going to explain what they did, why it was actually smarter of them to do it, and how, once again, it's counterintuitive to Trump's peace in the Middle East and Abraham Accords and diplomacy outright. So I'll cover that in 1 second. Hiding is not winning. No, obviously not, Jack the Ripper. Hiding long enough is winning, because we can't afford to spend all the time that's needed there without the GOP being absolutely annihilated in future elections. So hiding long enough is winning. Yes, it actually is. If you can outlast your enemy, you win. Actually, Iranians already are having some Marines and soldiers in their hands, folks, says Sandra Vu. I am not seeing any credible ground reports of Persian people rising up or beginning to rise up against the Iranian regime. We'll see. It's not that it couldn't happen, but we'll see. By the way, please be sure to like this stream if you haven't already. You can like it by double tapping on your phone screen if you're watching on your phone, or just hit the thumbs up if you can find it, if you're watching from your computer especially. It does help the stream perform better in the algorithm. And if you haven't already, subscribe to American Advocates. Make sure notifications are turned on, so that way you don't subscribe and then never find my channel again, because YouTube's gotten stupid about that. But yeah, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. No, they are not waiting for the orange moron to put boots on their ground. Send them there and they will return in pine boxes, says Kevin Robinson. Who will return? Are you talking about our soldiers? Because that is true. But if we also send boots on the ground, we'll be wiping out even more of them. And I went live the other day to talk about why I felt like boots on the ground were imminent, because if Trump truly wants regime change, and he wants Persian liberation, and he wants to ensure that Iran's more cooperative, we'll just flat out need boots on the ground. You can't just hover jets over a country with a regime that is religiously ideological, right? That's why they're so extreme, is because they have a faith that makes them more superhuman, I would say, when it comes to resisting the efforts of countries like us. They believe deeply in their religion and in their culture. They're not going to quit under just threats from bombings and from our Navy. We will need boots on the ground in order to obtain law and order in that country and establish a true regime change. And so, boots on the ground would be costly for us, because no doubt more soldiers will die, but it would be even more costly for them as well, because our military is pretty superior at the end of the day. But it would really prolong the event too. There's so many downsides to it. Not sure how it's having the opposite effect. Well, then shut the fuck up and pay attention. Pull out a notepad, thank me for my wisdom and knowledge and perspective, and start taking notes, and you'll know soon. Actually, you should probably go back and rewind this or watch this later so you can see all the points I've already been making when it comes to how it's having the opposite effect. Huey says they are dancing in the streets because they think the Americans are going to do it for them. Correct. That's more that's more of the reporting that I'm seeing, and more of the accounts that I'm also witnessing as well. So Glenn says, Buster Hyman. What a name. Hiding long enough. You're a derp, says Jack the Ripper. Well, it's true. What happened in the Middle East during the wars of the 2000s, Jack the Ripper? Look at any of those countries that we were involved with in 2003, 2007. Look at any of those countries. What currently do their situations look like? Are they shining beacons of Western democracy and freedom? Or did the radicals there just simply hide long enough and wait for us to leave? What actually happened there, Jack the Ripper? Use your fucking head, you imbecile. I know it's hard for people to critically think. You're all brought up in the institutionalized education system, so you're programmed to learn facts without critically examining them. But please, this channel's about so much more. And I really do believe in you people sometimes, and I think you guys are capable of so much more. You just have to learn how to not hear something and then wait for your emotions to tell you how to feel about it before moving on about your day. You need to hear something, repeat it to yourself, think about it, look at it objectively, look at all of the circumstances around it, use historical context to formulate a accurate prediction of what will happen to predict outcomes, and then come up with some sort of a conclusion or narrative. Not just, oh, hiding is winning. That's so stupid. Well, hey, you don't have a good argument against it because you can't. You're not on my level. You're just not smart enough to. You cannot contend against the arguments. But yeah, Buster Hyman name is absolutely it is crazy. He should definitely subscribe to this channel. Dial Up says, was 1982 the USS Liberty people? I honestly wonder. Yeah. Host should enlist. Yes, I should. So should you. We should all enlist. I can't wait to go die for Israel. It's been like a dream of mine, actually. I am the lesser than Goya. My life is null and void. My purpose is to serve Israel. I can't imagine a better fate than just landing there and just having my legs blown off for Israel. My ultimate dream. You're completely correct, Primal Screams. American advocates, do you think he will be drafted to? Do you think we will be drafted to fight in Iran? Trump, yeah, you're going off the Caroline Levitt thing where she said Trump's keeping all options on the table, but that's a pretty standard response. I'd be shocked if a draft occurred. In all honesty, I would be really shocked. Lawnmower offensive, drone strikes. Yeah, war has changed. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your opinion, says Isaac Williams. Thank you. I appreciate that. You better subscribe too if you haven't already. I like that. Thank you. Bold, you cheap bastard. You're still here, says Eddie. Mom, Meatloaf, stop everything. Eddie's donated 99 cents, and I appreciate that, Eddie. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Thank you. W for Eddie. W for Glenn, the super chatter so far today. Appreciate you guys. Bold, you don't even has $1. Stop everything, says Glenn. Yep, just did. Ed doesn't have 20. See, I like you, lifeguard. Ed doesn't have $20 he's willing to bet. Bold as a lion. Do it. Give $20 and I'll match it. Hey, why does it have to be contingent on Eddie? Hey, guys, I got news for you. The tariffs are due no matter what. You don't get to say, well, that guy only paid this amount. Your tariff is your tariff at the end of the day, right? Like, it's not really, that's just how it goes around here. That's called the free market. So I will match your zero, says Eddie. Greater Israel. Yeah. Dial up. Yes. Okay. So let me discuss this. Peace in the Middle East. This is important to acknowledge here, and how this Iran war is creating the opposite effect of peace in the Middle East. And it just outright is, right? Iran, this comes down to Iran's retaliation strategy and their counterstrikes. What they've done is actually objectively, tactically smart. And I'm going to explain why right now. Strategically smart. They've targeted all of their neighbors, and because they basically, I think they knew that this time was going to be the time. They saw the writing on the wall. Trump moves a lot of our military overseas. And then, Israel, with its history of being a provocateur and always stirring up the hornet's nest like they do, did what they did again, as in accordance to what Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State, and Speaker Mike Johnson said. They outright said it. We found out Israel was going to strike them anyway, so we decided, well, shit, we need to strike first then. So we did. I think Iran saw the writing on the wall. They were ready. And they launched counterstrikes, not just against our naval fleet there in their Gulf, and not just against Israel like you would expect, but they started targeting all of their neighbors. And so they started hitting Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan. Some of these actually are pretty effective counterattacks, by the way. You won't see pictures of it. It goes against anti-American propaganda. I don't blame them either, by the way, to some degree. But when you can find images of it, you can see they've done so in devastating effect for some of these regions. And this, of course, is destabilizing the Middle East even more. A lot of these countries are our allies. Some of them even more recently when it comes to Trump being more diplomatic with them in his second term, much to the criticism of some of the right and left wing people, right? Qatar. But you know, this is not good from a diplomatic standpoint for a whole host of different reasons. Now the messaging is, well, shit, look what happens when we strengthen our ties with America. Israel suckers them into another Middle East war. They strike, they stir the hornet's nest, and we're catching the shrapnel. Now the bombs are hitting us. You know, you have cities like Dubai that are literally built off of the narrative, at least, that their city is paradise. It's paradise. It's peaceful paradise, right? And how can they maintain that image and continue to attract all of the world's billionaires there and all of the world's wealthiest people there to live in a perfectly acclimated, good weather environment if missiles from Iran are now starting to hit their cities or come close to them even, right? That kind of ruins that image that they want established for Dubai, for instance. But then other countries too. It's like if they're going to start getting hit because of America, then despite the fact that we have seen them graciously vow to counterstrike Iran now and help us, you still can't ignore the fact that, or overlook the fact that this is happening because of their alliance with us, and it is retaliation from Iran because of us. And they're going to perceive it that way. They're world leaders. They will look at it objectively because they have to focus on the best interest of their own country. And so, though this might not lead to anything permanently bad happening when it comes to negotiations or diplomacy yet, this is something that they will mentally remember. Don't kid yourself. And nations will start questioning themselves when it comes to our alliances with them. If allying with America means all of a sudden, well, America is going to bomb this country that's near me because Israel says to, and I might catch shrapnel for it, and I might get attacked just for being allied with America. Is it worth it to have a strong friendship and relationship with us on a global scale? That's going to be the ultimate question here. It's counterintuitive, in all honesty, to what Trump was doing last year when he flew to the Middle East, and it's counterintuitive to diplomacy in general and peace in the Middle East, right? It's so much for the Abrahamic Accords, right? So once again, the opposite effect, and in some and more than that, it's more than just the opposite effect. In all honesty, it's even worse. In all honesty, so I wanted to point that out as well. So, yeah, straining future alliances, and I also wanted to point out the fact that this kind of ties in with my next point here. The fact that this administration, of course, is openly saying this is being done to protect Israel, right? And that's always been kind of the excuse in some ways. We got to protect our greatest ally, Israel, right? But the fact of the matter is, for some of the same reasons that America will wind up being more despised if we're not careful, and if we keep stirring up Muslim hornets' nests in the Middle East to the point of where our allies catch the shrapnel of other rockets being launched at them, well, Israel now is also kind of like the center of attention. If America is going to be more despised for this, which there's a chance of that, of course, Israel will certainly be the most despised. Because unlike our own MAGA cheerleaders here in America, other countries and their world leaders can see this for exactly what it is. It's why some of our NATO allies refused to allow us to use their air bases in their countries. Spain, Britain at first, right? They don't agree with the war, and they outright see it as Israel kind of buying our loyalty and then goading us into this war on their behalf. And so other countries will identify that. They may despise us, but they'll really despise Israel. And so making Israel safer, protecting Israel, well, what are the long-term effects of this? If Israel just keeps doing this, if Israel just keeps stirring up a hornet's nest here and there from a country they don't like because they believe they have the divine right and manifest destiny, I guess you call it, to expand into that region, from what is it, the Nile to the, what's the other river called? Up near Turkey, right? I can't remember the river name now. They believe in that, the greater Israel region. And if they keep doing this and we keep doing their bidding for them, we're going to wind up being despised, right? And that's one of my concerns at this point. I am an American nationalist, and I am very, very, I believe the right term would be, what's the right term? Bold, brazen about my love for America. I always talk about us being a superpower, untouchable, and it's true. We are the world's hegemony. We are the world's hyperpower. Nobody can stand up to our military in a one-to-one. But what we don't want to do is piss off every country that we're allied with to the point where they start questioning their alliances with us. And in a lot of ways, they are doing that, right? You saw this criticism from liberals over the Trump tariffs, and I thought that was wildly misplaced criticism. I think the tariffs, if they're implemented correctly, are a long-term benefit to America. I am pro-tariff. My first long-form video on this channel was pro-tariff. Before Trump even implemented them, I knew he was going to, and I made a video all the way. What's today's date? Literally about a year ago now on this channel. So the criticism of that over the tariffs I thought wasn't warranted. But when it comes to actions like this, right, that's a whole different story. It's one thing to try to fix a trade deficit and to manipulate geopolitics and formulate a strategy centered around trade and tariffs and the economy. That can be handled differently and perceived differently. But when all of a sudden missiles start flying because you've decided you need to stick your nose in the Middle East again, and now your allies are catching the shrapnel of that, that's an entirely different story, right? Tariffs don't put people's lives at risk instantly or really much at all, but missiles kill people and they destroy cities and buildings. So that's something I wanted to point out, and I think it's fair to point that out, and I think it's fair to say protecting Israel and developing peace in the Middle East are in opposition with this current Iran war that Trump has waged now. So, and most importantly, of course, more of the hypocrisy and the opposite effect of what Trump promised was his campaign promise of no new wars. And the MAGA cheerleaders hate this, and they try to point out videos where Trump has already stated, well, he said no nuclear capabilities, and he did. Excuse me. He did say that. But he also said no new wars, and he was very clear about that. And not all of us are stupid enough to believe that this is not a war, right? Like, for instance, the MAGA cheerleader people, they say, well, we've been in an imminent war with Iran for 47 years, right? It's like, do you hear yourself? So if I tell you I've been in an imminent car crash for 47 years, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? Really think about it, right? This is what I mean by critical thinking. To make matters worse, let's say I'm telling you I've been in an imminent car crash for 47 years, and then I get into one, and then I say, well, this is not actually a car crash. This is a prolonged traffic conflict. Would you fucking believe that, or would you think you're just a fucking jackass and you're gaslighting people? Very obviously so, right? So that's what I really want to say. This is a war. This is part of the military-industrial complex, the forever wars, and the way they dodge around this is by just not calling it a war. But it is a war, and it's especially a war if it goes as long as what some are projecting it to, including some within the administration and the Pentagon themselves, preparing for 100 days, preparing till September now. That's a fucking war. I don't know what else you call it when you kill 49 of a country's governmental leaders and then bomb the hell out of them and send the Navy. Every version of our military is there with boots on the ground, even being on technical standby. I don't know what else to call that. And Trump campaigned on no new wars. And here we are once again in a Middle Eastern war. So once again, to just recap briefly, and if you're tuning in now or you didn't catch the beginning of this, I highly recommend you go back and rewatch it because, I started off with the topic of the nukes and nuclear power and why this war is working against those interests. I then moved on to discuss regime change and how this Iran war is very likely having the opposite effect of our desired outcome for regime change, making America safe again. Opposite effect, very likely, with sleeper cells, right? Liberating the Persians could be the opposite effect there. Peace in the Middle East, protecting Israel, and no new wars. All of that we're now watching opposite unfold because at the end of the day, war is a roll of the dice. And I think Trump foolishly, like many, many other world leaders before him, thought that they could control the outcome more, and they're not doing it. And I don't think it ends very well for this administration. And that's really all I've got to say about that. I'll take a look at some of the chats here. Bold as a Lion says, Jack Ripper, dumbest comment award. Hey, there's just always the, the double-digit IQers out there. There's not much you can do about them, Hopefully Jack the Ripper has a job that contributes to society and he pays his taxes. And that's what I would encourage people like him to do is just don't try to think too hard. Just wake up, go work your wagey job and pay your taxes so your money can go support Israel. Okay. It's okay, little goy. It's okay. You have a place in this country too, Jack. It's okay. I promise. Good little goy. The promise was invalidated 2 millennia ago, says Dial Up. We all have good and evil within us, just trying to do the right thing, says Isaac Williams. Also, many don't know about the regime change that America did in Iran in 53. Oh, well, somebody said that earlier. It's 1953 all over again. And that is true. By the way, within one generation, what happened with Iran? It was all undone. And we see this with other Middle Eastern countries, too. It's another thing about regime change. It just doesn't work. From top-down regime change, it doesn't work. It just doesn't. The religion is too strong in that region, which once again, Monroe Doctrine. We shouldn't even be aware of stuff like this. I would prefer to not know. Like, it doesn't affect me. As long as we stay out of it, it doesn't impact me. It's not my fucking problem. But once we're over there, now it affects me. Now my gas is more money. Now our cost of living is going to get worse. You know what's another topic people don't discuss over there? Not just oil, fertilizer. There was some chick that was in my chat over the weekend, I think, and she brought up fertilizer. I looked into it. She's right. With fertilizer moving through that region and now that possibly being in jeopardy, we could watch our produce increase by 20 to 30% this season as a result if farmers have to pay more for their fertilizer. And then more farmers will need bailouts because they'll say, oh, because for some reason farmers, like, we have to bail out farmers all the time as it is. If they have to pay more for fertilizer, they're going to be like, oh, I went bankrupt this year because I had to pay more for fertilizer. Can you bail me out? And of course the answer is yes, we love our farmers and we need them, but it could be even more disastrous. There's a lot of unforeseen consequences that could be heading our way that we're not even going to be aware of until summertime or fall time. And then by then it's midterms. Isn't that going to be great? The timing of all this could be really bad for the GOP. In fact, I'm convinced it is bad. You know what comes of this, brother? Peace in the Middle East, something you could have never have dreamed of. That's not what's going to happen from this. Euphrates, that's the name, Bold. Thank you, yes. From the Nile to the Euphrates. That's right. That's what they believe is theirs. Israel does. $200 a barrel for Israel. Are you even American? Says Dialogue. Who has been the number one supporter of terrorism in the Middle East in the world over the last 40 years? Says Magic City Music. They say Iran. But guess what? The Middle East is not my problem. And it's not like America hasn't been guilty. We're going to possibly be funding the Kurds again. And we've already had a long history throughout America, not just in the Middle East, but even here in our own lands with the indigenous people, of arming our future enemies. So, we're not exonerated from that either. Let's be real. Israel started this in 1947. You don't know basic history of Israeli terrorism? Are you talking to me? Of course I know that. There can never be a sequel to the Weimar. The tiny hats are also victims to these bloodlines. Climate. Yeah, well, that's something to remember too, is a lot of the Jews in Israel are not supportive of Bibi Netanyahu either. So, sorry, Gaza, there is no Palestine. If Jay and Silent Bob had a kid together, 5,000 years compared to 250 years. What are we talking about here? Yeah, that's another thing, though. 250 years. What a great birthday gift to America from the Trump administration. Trump was hyping up the 250th birthday celebrations. And last year, I was genuinely excited about that. But now, I thought about that today, too. It's like, God, what is this going to be like during the 4th of July? What am I supposed to feel on that day? You know what I mean? Not a fan. Not good. Not good vibes. This is the start of World War III. I don't think so, actually. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for me. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. Thanks to my super chatters. Appreciate all of you guys. If you haven't already, like the stream still. There's still time for you to like it, especially since most of you are deadbeats who refuse to pay your tariffs. The least you could do is like the stream. You can go a little bit above and beyond that by watching the stream back when it posts a video and leaving a comment below it. I'll respond to those comments if they're good ones. If, in fact, by the way, you left a chat that I didn't see and you really wanted me to read it, you can leave a comment on the video when this stream posts as such, and if it's worth my time, I will respond to it. Also, subscribe to American Advocates for more content like this. Turn on post notifications, and I'll be live tomorrow as well to discuss who knows what at that point. I saw some Epstein stuff came out that I took a look at, but didn't feel like talking about today. Maybe I'll go into that tomorrow. Who knows? We'll see. You never know what the news will bring tomorrow at this point. I will say at the very least, it is pretty exciting again to be a live political streamer because I'm not running out of topics like I felt like I was a month ago. So anyways, don't give up hope. Don't take the black pill. A lot of this stuff has been critical of Trump. It's been more on the pessimistic and realistic side, unfortunately, but there's always hope for this country. This is the best country to live in by far. No other country compares. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. Glory to America. God bless the USA, and God bless all of you. Have a great rest of your evening. See you tomorrow. Thanks to all my regular viewers, like I said, Bold as a Lion, Eddie, thank you for the super chat. Glenn, thank you for the super chat. And the Law and Order was most appreciated. I saw a couple of you guys, 2009 Lifeguard, thank you. Take care, guys. See you tomorrow.